My husband suddenly told me to leave our house because my parents live there. I was surprised and confused. He threatened divorce if I argued. Lately, he'd been distant, and I had my own complaints. I pay all the living expenses, $1,800 a month, but he seemed to forget that. I couldn't believe he wanted me out. He said his parents wouldn't be comfortable with me there. I didn't understand but agreed to leave and take my things. He was happy when I agreed and left. I called a resale shop right away. My name's Emily. I live with my husband, Robert, who's a bit older than me. We met through friends and hit it off right away. One day, we hung out together, and Robert mentioned he wanted to be a voice actor. His voice was really nice, and I liked listening to him. We swapped numbers and decided to spend more time together. Eventually, we started dating without really talking about it. I was young and just out of college, so maybe I liked the idea of being with someone older and more experienced. It felt like a grown-up romance to me. My best friend, Ashley, was worried about me dating someone 5 years older than me. But I told her it was okay because lots of people have relationships with an age gap these days. I really liked Robert, and he liked me too, so I wasn't concerned. After dating for about 3 years, Robert brought up the idea of getting married. I'd already told my parents about him, including the age difference, so they were curious to meet him. With all this talk, I wondered when he would propose. He ended up popping the question during one of our relaxed hangouts at my apartment. It wasn't the most romantic setting, but it felt like Robert, and I was happy with it. When Robert proposed, I said, "Sure, let's get married." It was a bit casual, maybe for both of us. After that, we visited each other's parents. But honestly, I didn't click with Robert's family. When we went to his family's house, it was filled with what seemed like old stuff, maybe antiques, but they looked like replicas or fake pieces to me. When we entered the living room and met Robert's parents, they were wearing expensive branded clothes and flashy jewelry. They seemed like a typical rich couple. It was clear our tastes and values didn't match. Robert's mother even made a rude comment about my appearance, which shocked me. But I figured as long as Robert and I were happy, I didn't have to deal with his parents too much. After we got married and moved into our condo, Robert seemed anxious. One day, he asked about a woman in a blue dress at our wedding. I was confused. I replied, "There were a few guests in blue dresses, so I'm not sure who you mean." Robert clarified, "The one who gave a speech as your best friend." Was it Ashley? Realizing, I said, "Yes, Ashley wore a blue dress." Robert sighed. So it was Ashley. "Why are you so interested in Ashley?" I inquired, noticing his flustered demeanor. Robert explained, "Oh, it's nothing serious. I thought I saw someone who looked like her the other day, and it reminded me of her speech at our wedding." His sudden interest in Ashley puzzled me, but before I could ask more, he chuckled and brushed it off, retreating to his room. Later, Ashley called me with news. "Hey, Emily, my boyfriend's coming back to the U.S. next year." Ashley had been dating her boyfriend since high school. They knew each other since elementary school, but he moved away in middle school. Since then, they wrote letters to each other. They reunited in high school, and that's when he confessed his feelings for her. I love hearing Ashley's love stories. Despite her boyfriend working abroad for years, the relationship stayed strong. He'd been transferred to an international branch after working for a few years in the U.S. Even with the distance, they stayed close and communicated regularly. "Do you think he'll propose when he comes back? And then you'll get married?" I asked. Ashley laughed. "Emily, you always jump to conclusions. Just make sure to invite me to the wedding. I'll give a great speech. After your touching speech at your wedding, I'll need you to do the same at mine." but don't set the bar too high. We chuckled together over tea, knowing we could talk about anything, trusting each other completely. Whenever one of us had a problem, the other was always there to listen and support. Around this time, I noticed Robert was coming home later and later. "Working late again today," I remarked. "Yeah, you don't think I should work just because we're married," Robert responded. Even though we were married, Robert still pursued his dream of becoming a voice actor. He worked part-time jobs to support his studies, but didn't see immediate results. All the money he earned went into his voice acting classes, so I covered our living expenses. Because of this, we couldn't save much together. After a while, I realized Robert wasn't willing to give up on his dream for our family's sake. I couldn't shake off my worries about Robert working so much overtime. His long hours added to my concerns. "Hey, it seems like you've been working a lot lately. Aren't they making you do too much overtime, especially for a part-time job?" I voiced my worry. "I've got it under control. More money never hurts." "Just focus on yourself," Robert replied sharply, shutting down the conversation. By this point, Robert had stopped using my name and only referred to me as you. When we got married, I thought he'd speak to me kindly and often, but after the wedding, his words became harsh most of the time. His once gentle, deep voice now sounded rough, likely from drinking too much. Aspiring voice actors need healthy throats, so I worried about his well-being, but he didn't seem to care. Gradually, he started avoiding me, even ignoring me at home. That's when Ashley called, wanting to talk. Since I had my own worries, I suggested meeting up. We chose a karaoke spot to chat privately. Ashley seemed cautious, picking a room where she could see the staff from the door. "Why did you choose this room specifically?" I asked. "Yes, I chose this spot because I wanted the staff to keep an eye out for any suspicious individuals lurking nearby," Ashley explained. "Suspicious person? Is that related to what you wanted to talk about?" I asked. Ashley nodded, explaining that she felt like someone had been following her since she quit her job a month ago. Even on her days off, she sensed someone trailing her. She chose a room where the staff could easily see to prevent the person from eavesdropping on our conversation. "Have you spoken to the police about this?" I inquired. "I tried, but since there's no actual contact, they can't do much." "What about your boyfriend? He's coming back in a month." "I thought I'd discuss it with him too, but I wanted to first talk to you." Someone close by, Ashley explained. Ashley hadn't seen her stalker clearly because she was too scared. She didn't know if it was a man or a woman, so I decided to keep an eye out and try to identify the person following her. Through that, I discovered who it was. Although I couldn't talk to Ashley about my relationship issues with Robert, it turned out that the one stalking her was none other than my husband, Robert. He claimed to be working late every day, but he would actually wait near Ashley's workplace after his shift ended and follow her when she left. It was shocking to realize that someone so close to me was scaring my best friend. When I discovered the truth, I was devastated. The expression on Robert's face while he followed Ashley was chilling. He had this creepy, unsettling grin. I had fallen in love with and married this man, but in that moment, all the love I felt for him vanished instantly. I confided in Ashley and urged her to move as soon as possible. With the help of her coworkers, she arranged for someone to drive her from the underground parking lot to her new place. After Ashley and I took these precautions, Robert's frustration grew, and one day that frustration boiled over. "Since my parents will be staying here, you need to go back to your parents' house," Robert suddenly announced, convinced he was making sense. "Do you have an issue with that?" "If you disagree, I'm okay with getting a divorce," he added, starting to assert his position. While I had many complaints about him and had even considered divorce, I didn't think he could just throw me out of our home. After all, I'm the one paying $1,800 for our monthly expenses. I wondered if Robert even remembered that. As I looked at him skeptically, his patience wore thin, and he lost his temper. Just leave already. My parents can't move in if you're still here. Why do I have to be the one to leave? I don't understand it at all, Robert exclaimed. But I replied, fine, I'll take everything I purchased with me. As soon as I agreed, Robert told me to hurry up and walked away. I wasted no time and contacted a local buyback service. The following day, they arrived at our apartment. Initially, Robert seemed smug, assuming I was leaving. However, his expression turned to shock as he watched them evaluate all the furniture and appliances. Once they finished assessing everything except what was in Robert's room, a staff member handed me a quote. The total value is $22,000, the buyback staff informed me without hesitation. I signed the document and said, okay, go ahead and sell everything. Robert, suddenly realizing the situation, grabbed my arm. Wait, why are you selling everything? My parents are supposed to live here. How will they manage without furniture? I pulled away from his grasp. What do you mean? When we got married, you told me you were broke because of your acting classes. You practically begged me to cover the rent, furniture, and living expenses. I never realized you were that broke. I feel deceived. Remember the $1,800 monthly expenses I've been paying? From now on, you'll cover that. And with your parents moving in, I'm sure it'll be even more, I stated firmly. Robert's face turned pale, but he quickly tried to regain his composure. Thought you could bring up money, and I'd back out of the divorce. Who do you think you are? I've already found a wealthy woman, Robert said defensively. As I processed his revelation about his close relationship with a wealthy woman, it dawned on me that he might have been referring to his stalker-like behavior toward Ashley. If that was his idea of being close, then Robert was seriously deluded. Ashley indeed came from a wealthy family. Her grandfather was a successful businessman, and her father now runs the family business. Ashley was the epitome of a perfect heiress, yet she never flaunted her wealth. She lived modestly, like me and our friends, and nobody judged her based on her family's money. It seemed Robert had learned about Ashley's affluent background and decided she'd be a better match for him. Could he really believe that wealth determined someone's worth, especially when it came to marriage? That thought infuriated me. However, I knew Ashley would never consider marrying Robert. Ashley's longtime boyfriend, who she's been with since high school, is returning to the States soon. They'll probably get married, I stated. Robert was stunned to hear that. He wasn't considered close to Ashley, and she found his behavior creepy. But I always walked Ashley home, he insisted. You should consider yourself lucky you weren't reported to the police, I retorted. But I didn't know she had a boyfriend. He's been abroad, Robert protested. They've been pen pals since elementary school and talk almost every day. Unlike you, who's only been working part-time jobs, her boyfriend is a successful man recognized even by her father, I asserted firmly. Robert looked defeated as I spoke. Once the buyback workers had taken all the furniture and appliances, he seemed to regain some composure. I guess you're all I have left. You'll support my dream of becoming a voice actor forever, right? He asked, trying to strike a charming pose. I gave him a cold stare and replied, excuse me. I've already visited a divorce lawyer and started the process. Let's communicate through our attorneys from now on. Perhaps thinking I still harbored feelings for him, Robert clung to my waist. Don't say things like that. Haven't we been getting along all this time? He pleaded. Getting along? Ever since you found out about my best friend Ashley being a wealthy heiress, you've been distant and started hanging around her. I realized marrying you was a mistake right after I said, I do, I declared. Robert broke down in tears, behaving like a little boy despite being older than me by 5 years. Seeing him cry like a child only made my already diminishing affection for him plummet further. I can't stand being in the same room with you anymore. Just stop it. Oh, and by the way, I informed your uncle, who owns this apartment we're renting, about our divorce, I added. My uncle? You know he's strict, right? Robert exclaimed. Well, I've been covering all the rent and living expenses until now. When I mentioned that you might struggle to afford it if I leave, he said he'd find work for you. That also means I won't be able to continue my voice acting studies, I explained. You hardly ever practice anyway. Maybe it's time to face reality. And if you try to approach Ashley again, I'll report you to the police right away. Goodbye, I stated firmly. I left the house with a firm resolve to never look back. My immediate plan was to return to my parents' house, but I also considered finding a new place closer to my job if the opportunity arose. As for Robert, it appeared his uncle followed through on his promise and found him a job at his company. Soon after, Robert's parents, who had been planning to rely on their son's marriage to the wealthy heiress, also moved into the apartment and began working for the uncle's company. It seemed like taking advantage of others ran in the family. I felt relieved to have escaped from such a toxic environment. While the age difference didn't matter much to me, I realized the importance of choosing my next partner more carefully. On a brighter note, after everything with Robert had settled, I received a wedding invitation from Ashley herself. She introduced me to her longtime boyfriend, and I genuinely wished them all the happiness in the world. While my first marriage didn't work out, I hoped that Ashley's marriage would be a lasting and happy one for many years to come.